Welcome to Changing the Face of Wellness podcast. This is where we intersect wellness and education so that you can avoid burnout, increase well-being, and create a positive learning environment in your school. I am your host, Rachel Harper. Let's jump right into it. So I am excited for today's episode, as I am always excited for every episode. So I am so glad that you are here, because today we are talking about how to create a positive learning environment that emphasizes peace and calm. And so if you're anything like me, you have been in a classroom where chaos exists, where there were days where the students they were just out of control. And it was just like, is there a full moon today? Because you just don't understand why the kids are bouncing off the walls. Maybe they got, smart mouths a little bit more than they usually do. Maybe you working in middle school and they're running around more than usual. Like there's just this difference. And so something that we know we often hear as educators is the conversation of classroom management. And often when it comes to that concept of classroom management, it is often talked about from the concept of what are some different things that you can do to really control the kids in the classroom, right? Like what are some tactics, some quick things? Like, for instance, you might say, if you can hear me, clap once. If you can hear me, clap twice, right? That can be a classroom management tactic that a teacher can use, and maybe you've used it before yourself. But I want to go deeper into creating a true positive learning environment where when students step foot into your classroom, it's almost like they have an expectation of it being almost this calm sanctuary where they know they cannot overstep boundaries, and where they understand that when they come in, yes, they will learn, but it's also a calm environment, right? Where peace exists. It has to exist. And so one of the ways that I run my classroom just naturally, just based off of my own temperament and my own personality, is I'm a very calm person. So I just naturally run my classroom from the standpoint of peace. And so you may ask, well, what does that actually look like? So what that looks like for me is, even during my time with students, I understand that there are times where I need to incorporate quiet moments while students are still actively engaging and learning. That looks like a transformative classroom. Transformative classrooms, they typically put away the status quo. And what is the status quo? The status quo is, look, we need to be up on a stage, turning flips as educators from bell to bell. From bell to bell, you need to be, this circus act. You need to be just doing all the things. And the students just need to be sitting and watching while you're getting more tired and the student is still failing tests. And you're like, man, I did all these things. I don't understand. Well, you have to learn how to incorporate stillness sometimes in your classroom, incorporate peace in your classroom, because that's what stillness brings, but also giving students an opportunity to be the leading role in their education while you step back and be a facilitator. So that's what a positive learning environment boils down to. So you do want to make sure that as a successful teacher that you are creating a positive learning environment. But oftentimes when we talk about positive learning environments, it's oftentimes an incomplete picture, not incorrect, but incomplete. Yes, a positive learning environment has students who are engaged in their learning, but a positive learning environment also has students who understand that it is a place of calm, that it is a safe space, that it is a place where they can come and be in a positive teacher-student relationship as well. And so we have to make sure that we are carrying out a positive learning environment in its complete form. So how can you begin to create a positive learning environment in your classroom or in your schools? So there are 3 steps that I'm going to give you to make sure that you are able to create an environment that breathes peace, that breathes engagement as well, because both of them can coexist. So before I give you the 3 steps, I want you to reflect on some questions. Is your classroom inviting? Does your classroom have a lot of clutter? How many posters and anchor charts do you have on the walls? Do you have unfiled worksheets lying around everywhere in your room? What does your classroom, what does it say to those who enter? Does your classroom yell chaos or does it whisper calm? Now, I'm not telling you that you need to create this perfect Target or Pinterest model classroom, but what I am telling you is that you need to have the ability to create a regulated environment, and that begins with the five senses of your students. Okay, so you gotta care about the senses of your students. Remember, what do they see? What do they smell? What do they hear? You have to make sure that you are not overstimulating your kids in your classroom. You're not overstimulating them with sound. You're not overstimulating them with sights. You're not overstimulating them even with smells. A positive learning environment, it cares for the five senses of your students and even your own five senses. You're responsible for creating a regulated environment. It's not for your students only, okay? But your regulated environment, it is also for you too. Right? So you have to live in that space. You might spend a lot more time in your classroom than you do at home. So why not create a positive learning environment that not only creates space for your students to learn, but that creates space for you to teach and for you to also have your wellness and your well-being show up at the same time. So let's break down the 3 steps that you can begin using to create a positive learning environment in your classroom. So first and foremost, you are going to declutter your room. I want you to think minimalist. Okay. Now, I know this can kind of be hard if you are working in an elementary school. Typically, when I've seen elementary schools, there's just stuff all over the walls. Okay, there's like just stuff everywhere. But how can you at least declutter the space when you have too much clutter, too much worksheets, too many anchor charts, too many things on the wall? That can unlock emotions. That can either unlock overwhelm or that can unlock peace, depending on what you have up. Clutter is a contributor to overwhelm. I want you to think about your own home. When your own home has a lot of clutter, you might not be able to think. I know when my home needs to be clean, I can barely think. And I'm just like, I need to clean. I need to clean my home. I need to put some things away, fold the laundry, whatever the case may be. I need to do something because the clutter is contributing to my overwhelm, right? And so what clutter does is it sends a signal that some unfinished tasks or goals still need to be addressed. And so if that is the case, you're going to always feel like you're never done. I'm not done. There's something else I need to do. What haven't I got done? And anytime you feel like you still have tasks and goals that are unfinished, that can lead to anxiety. So when you declutter your classroom, you actually declutter your brain and you give your brain permission to focus on the primary task at hand, which is teaching and learning. So go ahead and minimize how much stuff you bring to your classroom every year. You don't need to keep piling up year after year after year. If you're going to bring something in, take something out, especially if you're staying in the same classroom and you've been there for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 or more years. Take something out. Stop just piling up and buying new things that you think are cute. Get rid of some things as well. Maybe donate them to a new teacher on your team or, put it somewhere. Send out an email. Let people know you have some things at the end of the school year so you can declutter your classroom and start fresh the next year. Number 2, you want to create a comfortable ambiance in your classroom. So a comfortable ambiance that involves your lighting, that involves sound, that involves the temperature, and that involves empathy. You want to consider, do you have too much lighting? I knew a teacher, she had many lamps around her room and she kept the overhead lights off. And so anytime I walked by her classroom, you couldn't even tell that she had students in there. She had a calm classroom because she kept low lighting. So again, think therapy. I've also seen classrooms where they have like a blue shade over their rooms. And typically, because I work in special education, there are some special education rooms where there are they put a blue covering over the lights. And so it creates a more softer tone for the sensory issues that students may have. So something that you can do is, for example, when students are working on their laptops, you may keep the lights low. Right? Maybe you bring in some lamps, keep the lights low. At times, I softly play study music as well for my students. So again, when they're working on their laptops, if they're working on a presentation, if they're working in groups, if they're doing independent work, I sometimes like to put on lo-fi study music. So I know we often hear of bell-to-bell instruction where we have to teach from the beginning of the class all the way up until the last minute of class. But there are moments where I do give my students permission to breathe. Right now I work in middle school, so their breathing moment might be 2 or 3 minutes before it's time to clean up, maybe the last 5, 6, 7 minutes. I give them an opportunity to calm their minds. So I do give my students some boundaries that they have to stay within when we are in our calm moment. So number one, they always ask me, can you please cut off the lights? Because I have windows in my room. So I will cut off the back half of my lights and keep the front end of my lights in my classroom on. And then I lift my shades and let the sunlight come in, right? And I let them know, and this is what I tell them all the time, butts and seats. Butts and seats. And then I turn it into a science lesson. I say glutes and seats. Gluteus maximus and gluteus minimus should be in seats. And they started asking me, what is a glute? That is your booty. You need to have, butts should be in seats. So this is a science classroom. Gluteus maximus should be in seats. Glutes should be in seats. Okay. So I give them boundaries around what is the expectation when we are in our moment of calm before class ends. Okay. So yes, bell to bell is a great strategy to use for classroom management, but sometimes there are moments where students do deserve to have a timeout, and you do too. And so that is a way that you can do that. But then the last one, give students space to lead in their education. You do not always have to be on. So again, thinking bell to bell instruction, the teacher is always on. They're always the sage on the stage, as they say. They are the circus act. So you do not have to be the circus act all the time. Give students permission to lead in their education. So that might look like giving them a project, right? Or giving them a project up front. That means when a new lesson begins or a new unit begins, you tell them that they are going to do a project. So now they're doing project-based learning, a PBL. So they're doing the research, they're doing the networking with one another, they're doing the learning on their own, and then you come on the back end and you teach, right? So typically we like to do direct instruction, and we like to inundate students with all the information that we know so that they can pass the next quiz and pass the next test and pass the state assignment. Students do very well when they research information on their own through concepts like project-based learning, where you come on the back end and teach the information. It actually makes it easier for you to teach when you teach through a PBL, because now the things that you're saying aren't foreign. They have researched the information, learned the information, compacted the information, put it in their own words so that they understand it, so that when you come on the back end, it makes it easier for them to learn. But what that does when they're on stage and you're just a facilitator, that gives you the opportunity to eliminate the status quo of that dog and pony show where you're doing all the backflips and then the students still miserably fail the test. Yeah, that show, that dog and pony show. So give your students the chance to lead. Permit yourself the opportunity to breathe. PBLs give you the opportunity to breathe. It gives you the opportunity to say, you lead, I facilitate, I don't have to be on, you guys are on, I'm slightly off, right? And so I think, unfortunately, many educators have forgotten how to do that, right? We've forgotten that educators are people first. Have you forgotten that? Right? You're a person with real needs before you're an educator. And if you don't create space for your needs inside your classroom, you'll forever wait for Thanksgiving break, Christmas break, spring break, or summer breaks to catch a break. Don't do that. Let's stop doing that. Let's stop making that the status quo. Peace, joy, and fulfillment are at your fingertips. So don't be afraid to go after them. So here's your exit ticket. I want you to transform your classroom. Take a moment to identify how you'd like to transform your classroom to create a regulated environment. Be sure that it includes your needs in addition to the needs of your students, okay? So it's not just for your students, it's for you as well. So I want you to reflect, identify how you've allowed the status quo to affect your performance in the classroom. Does it increase your overwhelm? Are you always the sage on the stage? Do you ever sit back and facilitate and allow students to lead? So commit to transforming your classroom to include stillness, moments of peace, and also the leading or leadership of students within a specific time frame. Okay, so those are the things that you're going to do to make sure that you are avoiding burnout, increasing your well-being, and creating a positive learning environment. So speaking of creating a positive learning environment, before you go, I want you to go to restformymind.com and download a new training that I have for you. It is called How to Set Boundaries and Stick to Them. If you're going to have a positive learning environment in your school, boundaries are necessary. Now, here's the thing about this training. This is not boundaries just for your students, between you and your students. These are also boundaries that you will create so that you can have space, time, energy for home. Oftentimes that work-life balance is really not there, and boundaries will allow you to create what I call not work-life balance, but work-life harmony. So go to restformymind.com, download that audio training. It also comes with a supplementary workbook that you can also make a small investment to go along with the training. But that'll give you the opportunity to set boundaries and stick to them, because remember, we are looking to do what? Avoid burnout, increase well-being, and create a positive learning environment. If this episode helped you, go ahead and share this with another educator in your network. And also be sure that you subscribe to this podcast so that we can continue to help educators avoid burnout, increase well-being, and create a positive learning environment. I'll see you in the next episode.